Hello, this is Mikey, and welcome to another After Effects tutorial. Today we're going to be creating this bulging hose thing. I'm not sure what to call it. I'm going to show you some cool techniques with this. Some of it you may guess how it works, and some of it may be new to you. So make sure you watch it and see what you can learn from this. So let's start with a brand new composition. So I'm just going to hit Command N, or you can go up to Composition New up here. Let's just call this garden hose. Kind of looks like a garden hose. All right, so I'm going to hit Command Y, open up the solid settings. I already had kind of a grassy color, so just hit that. Boom, that's our background. But let's get into actually creating this hose. So I'm going to zoom out so I have more that I can see around the composition. Grab my pen tool, and I don't want to have a fill on this, just a stroke. And white works. Let's make that 75 pixels. And in order to get rid of the stroke, I can start making it and then delete it out of the shape layer, or if I hold down Option on the keyboard and click here, it will cycle through the different options for your fill, right? The gradients, and then also no fill with that line. So then that's what I want. So I'm going to start up above the composition, click, and then click down, and I'm going to start like holding down and curving, right? And let's kind of adjust this a little bit. All right. And I want that a lot thicker. So all the way up to almost 200 pixels looks pretty good. And let's try 150. All right. And I can always adjust that later. So you need to have a script for this. And luckily, the script comes included with After Effects. It's called the Create Nulls from Paths. So you can come up to Window, and down there, Create Nulls from Paths. I already have it docked over here. And what I'm going to use out of this script, there's, points follow the nulls, and nulls follow points, and stuff like that, but there's this trace path option, and that's what I'm going to use. So in order to use this, I'm going to click down into the shape layer, make sure I have not just that path, but this path down here selected, and click that trace path. And what this does is it's going to create a new null. Let's just call this water null, just so we have it. And inside of that is going to be an effect called trace path, and then there's an option to loop it, and then it has, you can see it just kind of loops it through. We don't want that loop on right now, so let's turn that off. And that's over 1 second. Let's extend that out to 3 seconds, and then also add to this some easing. So that's F9 on your keyboard. You may have to hit Function depending on what kind of keyboard you have. And let's adjust these eases a little bit. Still, we can't really do much with this because it's just a null, right? So let's create that water shape that we're going to bring through here. So a new shape layer. This time we do want to fill a watercolor, and we don't want a stroke. So let's make that big water. And I want to make sure that that is centered. So if we come down to make sure that shape layer is selected, and then there's these shape transform tools here on the side, and you can see position. It's not exactly centered, so I can just go in there, hit 0, 0, and it'll center it, make sure it's right on that. So the anchor point's right in the middle. Okay, so then what we want to do is I'm going to hit P on the keyboard. It brings up to the position of this layer. And I'm going to do the same thing on that null. Bring up the position of that null. You can see that this null, this position, has an expression on it. That's what's connecting it and making it all work. So I'm going to take this, and I'm going to use this pick whip. See, there's 3 of them. There's one by the track mat, one right under parent, and then there's this one right here that's in line with that position. What this does is going to connect the position data from this one, and it's going to pull it from here. When I did that, you can see now it is just going all the way through. Pretty neat. Also, with this trace, it's also going to affect the rotation of that null. So if we wanted to say, we can do the same thing with rotation. I'm going to connect rotation. Oh, I got to make sure that I have rotation there. Rotation to that. And then what we can do is we can do something like that if we want, right? But I don't need to do that for this look. Okay, so that's the beginning of it. The next thing is I'm going to use an effect called CC Composite. This is really a cool effect, and it comes built into After Effects. And it's recently had an update where it allows you to do some cool stuff. So on this shape layer down here, let's make sure we give it a name. Let's call this hose. So on that hose layer, we're going to CC Composite. So I'm going to just type that into help. That's a quick way of finding something. And then you can just arrow down, hit enter, and it brings it right into this. So CC Composite it's just a way of compositing layers within layers, but the new update has this option where I can bring in other layers into this layer. So to show you what's going on, I'm going to take this water bulge, I just gave that a new name, layer, I'm going to turn it off so you can't see it. It's no longer visible. On this hose layer, I'm going to now bring in that water bulge layer, and you can see it composite, it's on, but it's only the RGB. If I take that off, then it's bringing in everything else outside of the alpha range, right? So that's cool. So now we have that animation now applied to this hose layer. Really cool. And what's really also cool is, since this is all dynamic, let's go for, I can make changes, and everything's just going to update automatically to like the shape of the hose. Really nice. But why I wanted to do that is because I'm going to add some effects, and I want these two to be connected together. So the first thing is I'm going to just add a tint effect to this. Make sure that they're just both white. You can add, there's other ways, that you can do that, but that's the quick way I like to do it. And then from there, we're going to add fast box blur and add some blur to that. Let's 30. Let's see what that looks like. And then we're going to add to this levels. And in the levels effect, right here where it's channel, default is RGB. We want to go down to alpha, and then we can as we bring them closer together, you can see they start to sharpen up, and you don't see that fuzz anymore. So let's make it so it looks pretty good. And see, what happened is, because of that blur, it smooths out that transition from the hose to that little bulgy part. Let's turn on this again, and you can see now, look how cool that is, right? So let's add maybe some more blur. And I want to bring yeah, that's looking pretty good. Bring the stroke pixel size down so the hose isn't as thick. All right. I really like the look of that. That looks pretty cool. Now what I want to do also is I want to add a stroke to this. You don't have to do that. I'm choosing to. So on the hose layer, let's go to layer styles. Let's add a stroke to it. And then in that stroke settings, let's make that size a lot bigger. And maybe this like a dark green. Garden hoses sometimes are dark green. All right. That's pretty cool. Let's maybe bring the radius down a little bit. Now let's add a little bit more to this. So some things that we can do is, let's say we want this repeated, right? So let's go to that null, turn on the repeat. And you can see as it goes through, then it'll just start to repeat. But what if we want to have multiple at the same time? Well, let me show you how to do that. We're going to take this water bulge and that water null, highlight them both, duplicate it. I like to make sure they're next to each other. We can even like go in and give them similar colors, right? So that you can see them. Anyways, so then what we do is we go to the position and we relink it, right? Because this is now linked to the old one. So we got to link it to this new one. And then I can come in and let's change where that's located, right? Now you'll notice here, this one's not affecting that hose anymore. But that's an easy fix. If we come up to where it's CC composite, if we duplicate that, and then all we have to do is pick the other layer, and it automatically updates. So now we have two little bits of water coming through this thing. And then again, they're going to loop. Pretty cool. This is really kind of a cool effect. All right, so let's do a little bit more to this, right? So I'm going to add to this another expression. And this is something that I'm going to have to add to both of these little water bulge things, just because if we go into the anchor point, I'm going to add to this an expression called transform.position.velocity, and then we're going to take this whole thing and like divide it by 20, and I'll show you why in a second. Now you can see what it's doing is it's adjusting the anchor point based off of how fast it's going and like what direction it's going. So you can see right here, if I turn off this expression, it's a little more centered, but this kind of like flung it down a little bit. And then right here, it flung it out a little bit. And if I change this, what I'm dividing it by, let's say by 50, it's going to make it a little less pronounced. 500. Then it's right in. If I go all the way to a smaller number, say 10, then it's like really out there, right? Which is a little too much, right? So let's say 30. And let's copy that expression and do the same thing for the position of this other one, or sorry, the anchor point of this other one. And so you can see right here, that versus the null. See, that's where it should be centered, but this is where it is, right? So it's offset from the anchor point, giving it kind of it flings as it goes around the corner. And that's just based off of the velocity of how fast that layer is going. It's really kind of a neat trick. So there's kind of a big bulge of water going through a garden hose. Very stylized. This can be used for some other things, obviously. It doesn't have to be a water hose. But I just wanted to show you how to kind of create that smooth transition of the hose as the bulge goes through it like that. So I hope you learned some cool stuff with this. I had fun. This is kind of a fun look. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.